Hello, I'm Charles Curves, Australasia's passion provocateur. Welcome to this week's episode of the Charles Curves Show, episode 137, whether you're watching on YouTube or on Rumble or listening via podcast. In this week's episode, I aim to strongly rekindle in you your personal commitment to fighting for your freedoms. I say your freedoms are at grave risk, and the threats to your freedoms are increasing. Do you want to sacrifice your freedoms for the illusion of security? You can lock yourself away in a physical or mental jail and think you are safe, but that's not what being a human being is all about. In this week's show, I share with you 7 big current threats to your freedoms that are moving like a tidal wave to wash away important freedoms that you might just be taking for granted. However, people united against this tidal wave will succeed in preserving human freedoms. Lack of unity will put all humanity into metaphorical jails except for an elite minority. I don't want to be in jail, and I hope you don't want to live your life in that way. This show might help you think differently. Our format for the show is that I share my big idea. I share 6 resources to help you implement this week's big idea. I review some key happenings during the past week, and then the foundational principles for the Charles Curves Show and more information about my background are now at the end of the show so that newer viewers and listeners can see that there, but regular viewers don't have to go through that each week. So let's get into today's big idea. I consider myself a freedom fighter, a freedom warrior. Reviewing my life as the child of refugees from Hungary in 1949, refugees from communism, from totalitarianism, from a controlled environment, I can see how almost everything that I've done links back to freedom, to preserving freedom, to fighting for freedom. All my life I wanted to be a lawyer. Lawyers fight for the freedoms of their clients, and I never acted for government. I always acted for human beings against government. I was a tax lawyer. I've always been committed to health because I've known that being healthy enables me to be free. If you're locked up in hospital, you're hardly free. If you can only walk around with a Zimmer frame, you're hardly free. Great health gives you great freedom. Passion. I left the law, but I'm working as a legal strategist now. But I left the law 29 years ago to provoke people to pursue their passion, to be free to pursue their passion, to not have government or organizations telling you how you should live your life. Free to pursue your passion. Free for you to make your unique contribution to the planet. I'm chief executive of an industrial hemp company, textile and composite industries. We make the world's best decorticator that processes hemp that was invented by Adrian Clark, and his brother Tony Clark is the chairman of the company. Hemp is important. Industrial hemp enables family farms to be profitable, successful, sustainable. It renews the land. Successful farmers can stay on the land instead of coming into the city. One of the great defenders against freedom are family farms. If all farming is corporatized and people are living in the city, we are in big trouble. Many farmers growing hemp will help to preserve freedom. I'm CEO of this hemp company. I'm involved in hemp because I can see how important it is to preserve, to protect our freedoms. And lastly, I am chairman of the Australian Institute of Comedy, and I'm on the committee of the Australian Cartoon Museum. Comedy is a crucial aspect in being free to speak. And freedom of speech is being attacked left, right and centre. And comedians are being attacked left, right and centre to be politically correct, to not say anything that will upset the governing class, the elites. Well, I fight for comedians to be free to say whatever they want to say. And, of course, I also fight for not only comedy but coffee. Free to drink coffee in whatever way that I choose. So the Australian Institute of Comedy, we have to preserve the freedom of comedians to say what they want to say. None of this stuff about, I don't want to, no offending anybody. And you'll recall back 500 years ago, the court jester in the royal courts, they were the comedians, and they could humorously share truths that could not be said to the king or the queen, otherwise it would be called treason. The court jester played a crucial role in helping people to wake up to truth, to bring truths to the attention of the king, of the queen, of the rulers. Whilst I cover these 5 elements in the foundational principles for this show and why I do this show, I think it's important to deeply understand how they interplay in the context of today fighting for freedoms and understanding the threats to your freedoms. I think we need to fight harder for our freedoms than we have for the last 50 years. I think it's crucial that we do so because the threats to our freedoms are rapidly increasing in a most alarming way. And I am genuinely alarmed. This is no joke. I am alarmed, and I urge you to be alarmed so that you are willing to take action. Sadly, in Australia, in America, UK, Canada, surveys show that a majority of people would prefer security offered by government over freedom. Given the choice between security and freedom, most people, the majority, choose security. Do you prefer to be in jail? You go to jail, you'll be secure, you'll be fed. Go and commit a crime, you can be there for 10 or 20 years. You'll be secure except for the chance of some violence in jail. Well, most people survive jail. You won't have to worry about money. You won't have to worry about anything. Is that what you want? I see there are 7 big threats. Be aware of these threats and deeply think about how they impact on your freedoms. And my aim is to rekindle in you your desire for freedom, to not be controlled, to not have government telling you where you can live, where you can travel, what work you can do. How would that be? You say that's not coming. I say it is. The first big threat, you'll be locked up in your home, according to some bureaucrat flunkey's health declaration. Lockdowns, locked up. Secondly, you will be unhealthy and you will be stuck because you are unhealthy, either in hospital or at home, because of unwanted government interference in your body, enforcing you to put something in your body against your will, against your better judgment. 3, you'll be locked out of learning because of censorship, because of wokeness, because of political correctness. You won't be able to study the subjects that you want to study at university because it's not politically correct. Look at the pushback against Australian universities, against multi-million donation by the Ramsay Foundation to establish courses on the foundations of Western civilization. The left-wing universities in Australia pushed back and said that was outrageous. Imagine learning about the foundations of Western civilization. That's what happens. You get locked out of learning because of political correctness, because the government will dictate what it wants you to learn. Number 4, you'll be locked out of your church or your religion of choice because it's unacceptable to government, because it's unacceptable to the elites. Your freedom to worship disappears. 5, you'll be locked into your suburb under the 15-minute, 20-minute city rule. This is such an insidious, outrageous rule where it purports to limit people to traveling no more than 15, 20 minutes walking distance from your home, except for 100 times a year. Please understand how bad this 15 minutes city, 20 minutes city rule is. It's an abhorrence. It is outrageous. And if you don't know about it, take an interest. Go and speak, go and see it, your local municipality or local council. Push back against this outrageous imposition on your freedoms. Number 6, you'll be locked out of the banking system because you have views unacceptable to government. Your social credit score, like in China, won't be acceptable, like the Canadian truckers who were locked out of their banks. Their bank accounts were frozen. You'll be locked out of banking because you don't think the right way, how government wants you to think. And number 7, you'll be locked out of prosperity and increasing prosperity because of the outrageous nonsense spouted about climate emergency to therefore make electricity unaffordable and unavailable. And therefore, without electricity, your prosperity goes down. This is such an outrage. You have to understand what they're wanting to do. They're telling you lies that there's a climate emergency. I love the planet. I've been an organic farmer since 1976. I care about the planet. That's also why I'm involved in hemp. But to say there's a climate emergency is such a lie. And then to take away electricity from you and make it unaffordable, you're going to be locked out of prosperity because electricity availability is the foundational difference between rich and poor countries. Understand that. The foundational difference, because when you have electricity, your GDP goes up. When your GDP goes up, birth rate goes down. It's as simple as that. The Genie Foundation, of which I'm a trustee, talks, based on the work of Buckminster Fuller that I've done shows on previously, electricity increases GDP, reduces birth rate. Reduce electricity, GDP goes down, your life will become miserable. Don't you dare put up with this. Do you really want to be stuck in jail to feel safe? I say wake up if that's what you've been thinking. Oh, yes, government, protect me. The government is not here to help you. That's one of the 3 big lies. The first big lie is the check's in the mail. The second big lie is I'm from the government, I'm here to help you. Nonsense. You can see I'm passionate about this. I am passionate because I've been a freedom warrior all my life. I want you to understand the threats. Now, if you consciously say, oh no, I'd rather be in jail than to take a risk, terrific. That's your choice. So let's go with some resources to help you implement this idea of pushing back. My song this week is an important one because I said in the intro that if people unite against these attacks on freedoms, we will preserve them. So the song, of course, is United we stand, divided we fall, and if our backs should ever be against the wall, we'll be together, you and I. Yes, you and I. You and I as humanity. United we stand, divided we fall. And don't worry about minor bickering within the parties pushing for freedoms. That always happens in any group. But broadly, humanity uniting against the threats to our freedoms will ensure that we succeed. My book this week is Nelson Mandela's wonderful autobiography, The Long Walk to Freedom. You want to be inspired? Look what he did. He put his life on the line to fight for freedom, for South Africa's freedom. And of course, they've stuffed it up in many ways, but they're free to do so. Apartheid was an abomination, and there are attempts to create apartheid in Australia too, with The Voice, separate people according to race. I reject that. The long walk to freedom. My quote this week is relevant to you thinking that you need to be safe. Well, the safest place for a ship is in a harbour. But that's not the purpose of a ship. A ship will never fulfill its purpose if it stays safe. And I say that applies to you. The safest place for a human being is locked up in their house, but that's not the purpose of a human being. My spiritual tip for you is to meditate this week on how much freedom means to you. Do you really want to give away your freedoms for security? Is that what you really want? My health tip, and I've been reminded of this recently, is to walk barefoot in grass as much as possible. Connect with the earth. Draw energy from the earth. Everything is energy. Don't be separated from the earth. Walk in the grass. And lastly, since I've been talking about being in jail, being in prison, I thought I better tell you a spot of humor about being in prison. And a guy gets convicted of murder, goes to long-term jail, long-term prisoner jail, and they don't get coffee like I get from Julie. And at night, he's in his cell feeling morose, and he hears, there's many long-term prisoners here. Someone calls out, 57. Everybody laughs. Somebody else calls out, 121. Another huge laugh. And the new prisoner says to his cellmate who's been around for a while, he says, what's going on? He says, well, we all know the jokes so well that instead of telling the joke, we just tell the number of the joke. Says the new prisoner. Well, can I have a go? Sure, says his cellmate. So he calls out a number. 43. Silence. 77. Silence again. 11. Still silence. The new prisoner turns to the experienced cellmate and says, what's up? I'm calling numbers and no one's laughing. Mate, you got to know how to tell them. I love humour, as you all know. So, use these resources. Think about how important freedoms are to you. My aim for this show is to provoke you, to inspire you, to raise your self-awareness, to live life on your terms, free to live life on your terms. I invite you to subscribe to this YouTube, to this Rumble, to this podcast. If you enjoy it, share it with your family, your friends, your work colleagues. Discover more about our public programs at the website covest.com, our corporate programs, and the self-awareness and passion quest at charlescovest.com. My 2 books, Passionate People Produce and Passionate Performance, are available at those websites. So, let's review a couple of happenings over the course of the last week or 2 weeks. I missed last week because of logistics problems, of computer problems. So we decided, okay, God is speaking to us not to do a show, but to do it this week. I want to point out that governments around the world, including Australia, continue their gaslighting attempts to not have you understand the truth of what's going on, particularly with people falling like flies from sudden itis, now one of the biggest causes of death around the planet. Cardinal George Pell died conveniently. I question his death. I suspect very strongly that he was murdered. Cardinal George Pell was the most senior Australian Catholic cleric, and he was hunting people up to no good in the Vatican. And there's lots of no good happens in the Vatican. Don't you think that all those Catholic heavies in the Vatican are there for your benefit, dear Catholics? And I happen to have been raised a Catholic all my life. The reception for Novak Djokovic at the Australian Open tennis has been excellent. There's been almost no booing, and it shows that many people are waking up. He couldn't play last year, as many of you know. He stood up for his principles, which I urge you to do, because that's what makes you a successful human being, when you live life according to your principles. And I'm happy to report that Novak is on his way to winning his 10th Australian Open. There are only two at the end of the third round. That means there's only 16 players left in the men's draw. There's only two winners of majors, Andy Murray from Scotland and Novak Djokovic. So Novak's doing well, and I know him personally, and I am delighted about the reception that he's had in Australia. On the issue of sudden itis and sudden deaths, I urge you to speak up. They're being reported, and then allegedly no one knows where they're from. Well, I say I do know, and I say that you know. Speak up. Don't shut up. The other big news, of course, is the strange discovery of classified papers in Joe Biden's garage and office, and those papers, in my view, have been planted. This is all a way to make sure that Joe doesn't stand for the 2024 election. You watch what happens about these papers that have been mysteriously found. There are many people whose lives are being badly affected by government decisions, and I've been helping them in legal strategies. I must say I'm very concerned about the bias of judges in Australia who are biased in favour of the government narrative of not properly applying the law. I think all of us have to be conscious of this and call it out when it happens. It's a real problem. I say that many judges' bias will disappear, will reduce significantly, and they'll apply the law properly when their grandchildren suddenly start dying. And lastly, I have a fortnightly program on TNT Radio, but listen to TNT Radio generally. My shows are on Melbourne time, 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. on every second Saturday, but tntradio.live is a wonderful source of free speech. There's no political correctness, there's no wokeness, so tune in if you want the truth. And lastly, I need to report that Julie and I are both maintaining our exercise regime, our commitment to health, because health gives you freedom. Okay, so if you're new to the show, stick around for the foundational principles of the show and some more background about me if you'd like to hear about it. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Thanks for being with us. Thanks for sharing this show. I wish for you a week of nourishing and health-giving passion, of learning, of fun, of fulfillment, of challenge, and ever-increasing self-awareness. Enjoy the week. See you next week. Bye. And now, for viewers and listeners who want to know more about my background and what else I do with my life, as well as the foundational principles of the show, here we are. Since 1993, when I left my legal career, a career that I love, to become Australasia's passion provocateur, I have inspired and provoked and educated and motivated people all over the world to discover and pursue their passion. I have helped people via the books that I've written, via speeches at conferences, via in-depth team building programs, workshops over 1, 2 or 3 days, or over 3 months, 6 months. And I've coached people of all ages, one-on-one, from small, medium and large enterprises, government enterprises, helping them to identify the often tiny changes that can make a massive difference. One of my core principles is that freedom is what makes us truly human. That's why one of the greatest threats that government imposes on you to force you to observe its laws is the threat of imprisonment, the loss of your freedom. Just think about that. Government says if you don't behave yourself, we're going to put you in jail. No, I don't want to go to jail. I don't want to lose my freedom. That's a reminder to you of why freedom is so important. Without freedom, you and I are not much different to animals. If you were locked up in a cage for the rest of your life, how different would you be to an animal? This commitment to fighting for freedoms for all people is carried out by me primarily through 5 channels. Number 1, preserving the freedom to pursue your passion. Number 2, inspiring you to be able to be free through excellent health. Number 3, helping preserve freedom throughout the world through the expansion of industrial hemp, a magnificent agricultural crop, an almost miraculous crop that enables every community to thrive independently of government. In this way, the power of government to take away freedom is minimized. Number 4, fighting for freedom through legal strategies. So I do work as a legal strategy consultant, as an interface between clients and their lawyers. And number 5, as chairman of the Australian Institute of Comedy and as a board member of the Australian Cartoon Museum, fighting for the freedom of thought and speech through uncensored comedy and humour, through avoiding political correctness in the comedic space. When you block freedom of speech, freedom of thought, that's the beginning of the end of your freedoms. The foundational principles for the Charles Kovess Show are founded on the formula SA plus P equals S. Your self-awareness added to your passion will guarantee that you are successful. And the best definition of success I have found in life is that success is the progressive realization of your worthy ideals. The progressive realization of your worthy ideals. This show is also guided by Socrates' famous principle and quote, "The unexamined life is not worth living." You can see I'm wearing my red jacket. I wear my red jacket for all my shows. Red is the color of passion, so that when you see me on the YouTube version, it reminds you that when you see red in your life, you ask yourself the question, am I pursuing my passion? What am I passionate about? Am I still passionate about that? What might I newly be passionate about? Each week I explore one big idea that can change your life. And it's just one big idea because there's a chance you will remember it. If I give you too many ideas, then we get confused and we don't do anything. Clarity leads to power. Confusion kills passion. Each week I share simple and practical resources that you've heard me describe in the earlier part of the show. A spiritual tip, a health tip, lyrics of a song, a book, a quote, and of course humour. This show is not politically correct. I have no intention of being politically correct. And I love certain addictions, including my addiction to great coffee, my addiction to exercise, my addiction to reading, and my addiction to certain other unmentionable in public type behaviours. Who would know what they are? This show definitely subscribes to the view that we have a spiritual life. So if you don't like discussion of spirituality, this show is not for you. I promise you that I don't include anything in this show that I don't consider to be true and that I have not found to be useful in the work that I've done over the past 28 years, but also over the past 50 years in business, as a lawyer, as a consultant advisor. I only want to share stuff with you that is of value to you. Finally, if you have any questions or suggestions, please feel free to contact me at charles@kovess.com. Again, thanks for watching and listening to my show. Bye.